ahead and get started today with our chat with Jennifer Esteen. We'll go ahead and do introductions and then kind of get into the conversation. This is really a follow up to an interview that we did. Wow, almost 3 years ago at this point. And if you signed up to attend today's webinar, then you probably saw a link to that interview, and just encourage you to read that so you can get even more background. We'll probably touch a bit on that earlier conversation today. But just so proud to have Jennifer Esteen be able to take some time out from our busy schedule to talk with us today, and to be able to share this conversation with others who might be interested in learning how mother, a nurse, an activist found herself on the road to running for elected office. It is a very intriguing story. So I'm happy that we have the opportunity to get into that today. My name is Seth, and my pronouns are he, him. I am partner success specialist with Action Network and also Action Builder. We provide tools for the progressive movement, tech tools. And we're just happy to host the stage for this conversation today with Jennifer. And without further ado, I'll let Jennifer do the introduction. I'd love to know. Let us know, Jennifer, your pronouns, all that intro stuff. Let's get that going, and then also just the general background of who are you and what brings you to this conversation today.
Thank you so much, Seth. I am excited to be talking with you again. It's hard to imagine it's been 3 years, but it's been 3 years of COVID, and things went really quickly. And man, we've been so impacted by this virus that just seems like it'll never go away. I mean, it's endemic now. But when we first started our conversation 3 years ago, it was about me being an organizer in the labor movement. And, it's funny, I started my journey to labor in a right-to-work state. Like, I had no idea that I would ever be involved in the labor movement or even be a union member. I remember as a kid, like, there were all these stereotypes about people who were union members, and I never thought about teachers. I never thought about police or anything like that. I always thought about coal miners. I don't know why, but like my image in my mind of people who were union members was like they were people who had dust on their face. They were blue collar workers. And then when I moved to California, I had a kid, and then suddenly 2007, 2008, I'm really going to date myself here. The economic crisis hit. That was like the mortgage crisis, the financial crisis. People were losing everything, and I was in that number. I lost so much. I lost my house. I filed bankruptcy, and I had to figure out how, as a single parent to 2 little boys, how to make ends meet. And I ended up going to nursing school right here in the Bay at Samuel Merritt University. And that took me on a journey to working at the psychiatric emergency room at San Francisco General Hospital. And it was then that I became a nurse. And I'll never forget my charge nurse at the time. His name was Doug Morin, and he was like a 30-year veteran of nursing. And he gave me this little book, and it was a little purple book, like a half-size book, but it was thick. And he said, "This is your union contract." And I was like, I don't even know what that really means, but okay, I'll take it. And, was a member already from the day I got hired. And then I started to read the book, and I was like, oh, this is like the rules of engagement for being a worker. Like, nobody gets to come and tell me something arbitrary. Nobody gets to say I have made a mistake when I'm doing everything right. It even told me when I could take days off and how and what the pay rate was. I mean, it was just clear. And I was like, wow, this is amazing. Like, it was like nothing I'd ever experienced. And I started to learn every page of that book. People would come to me asking questions. They'd be like, so what are the holidays? Like, it's New Year's Day. What's our pay going to be? And I'd be like, go to page 42. Look at section 7.
Wow. So you learn the ins and out, and I do remember touching on that in our conversation way back when pre-COVID times, and So I mean, my follow up question for that as someone who's been a union organizer
Yeah.
and has been elected to leadership in your union. So we talked right when you had been elected as I believe VP at SEIU 1021
Hmm.
of organizing.
That's right.
And you're now campaigning for public office. Have you found electoral organizing to be similar to labor organizing?
Mhm.
Or what are some differences that you might have noticed? So, how is the
I think
electoral going versus how you did labor?
I think this is a really good question. I think the reason I became vice president of organizing for SEIU 1021 is because I led a really public campaign to save my clients from being evicted from their permanent housing. And in leading that organizing campaign, I did things that just felt right to do. I had no idea what textbook organizing was, but I started having conversations with the people being impacted, with the people doing the work, with community leaders and elected officials. And we started to build what people call a coalition. I didn't know I was building a coalition. I was just like, I need you. Let's all be talking. And, I think that that kind of building of the people who are impacted, affected, who can make decisions, that is necessary in any kind of organizing, whether it's union organizing, whether it's electoral organizing. You have to know what the issues are and you have to bring people together. I think what often happens in electoral organizing is people get focused on one thing, the election. What is this campaign? What are we trying to win? Who are we promoting? Or what are the values? And I think sometimes the building of the coalition, so to speak, is something that really needs to be long term. And the thing about electoral politics is that you have this fixed end date, election day,
Mhm.
and oftentimes all of the work that people do to get there, it just disappears as soon as the election is past us. And so what I'm trying to do is bring together like a marrying of the organizing instinct that people recognized in me when they elected me to be vice president of organizing and the techniques about building that coalition and make it so that we develop deep connections and relationships within the district amongst people who are already caring about stuff, people who are already organizing, people who already know that they don't want to see schools closed, people who already know that we need housing and resources for folks who have behavioral health issues, people who know all these things, do the work, and the work is going to persist beyond that fixed election day. So I think that that's where I see the electoral organizing and the organizing work that helps to sustain movements
Mhm.
really need to coalesce. And in successful campaigns, that happens. Like Bernie Sanders, helped to really bring democratic socialists to the forefront of people's minds. And I think we're seeing sustained movement. Um, and we need to do it broader, deeper, around all the issues that are impacting our lives.
Gotcha. Yeah. No, that's so real, and it's so empowering to think about how the two are connected and how we can kind of lean into both
Yeah.
ways of thinking about how you organize for the long term.
Mhm.
And I know that there's definitely folks listening on this webinar who have thought seriously about running for office themselves. So we get that contingency of being an activist, and you're no stranger to activism. What advice would you give them about getting started? I know this was new for you, but if you had to look back, what advice would you give to someone else coming along the way?
I feel super fortunate that I was able to be a part of a training program for women called Emerge. But I also did a bunch of other training programs. So Emerge is comprehensive in that it can be as long as 6 months. There's also boot camps that are just a weekend. But I did like a training for labor women that was a 1 day. I did bits and pieces with Emily's List, which helps women again. And I think getting into some kind of training program so you can learn the nuts and bolts, start to understand the language of campaigns. Just like when I went to nursing school, I had to learn a whole new language. Campaigns have their own kind of vernacular. And so that's important to start to understand. What is your win number? What is your electorate? This, that, the other. Is it I remember being confused by the concept of an election that was at large or by district. And it makes common sense to me now. But at the time, I was like, I don't really know what the difference is. And I think we have a dearth of education in our public health, in our public system where civics is something that kind of could be more robust. So take a class if you can. Also, if you can, talk to the people who are in the position that you're imagining you want to be in. Call the city councilman's office or council person's office. Reach out to, if it's an alderman or if it's a school board office or whatever it is, because a lot of times those people have the desire to share information. I think, pipeline of development, sometimes people don't know who their successor is going to be until the person shows up. And it might be even as simple as calling into the meeting. A lot of times people get connected to school boards because they have children and they want to see something different in the district, and they get active, they call into the meetings or they show up at the meetings and they go again and again and again. And then people say, either you should be running because you seem smart and you know these issues and you're speaking up, or it just gets inside the person and they say, this is something I care about and I could do it better than the people doing it today. So there's a lot of ways in. Ultimately, just say yes. Just, go and explore. And if it feels right, say yes.
Right. So for the folks listening, that Jennifer just laid out a nice list of kind of bullets that you could take to kind of follow in suit. And what I've heard is just seeking out opportunities to learn more. And then once that kind of, once you find that thing, if you will, that really inspires you to want to be the person to lead change, or someone recognizes that in you and that allows you to recognize it in yourself, then you need to be able to stand up and say yes. So that is definitely a great bit of advice that you just shared. So thank you for that. If you could, I would love to go on to another question, and it really just has to do with just timing. I kind of, the beginning of this decade has been challenging to say the least. And we kind of, our first time meeting each other and starting our conversation was just kind of right at that. We didn't know what was really coming. It's kind of that switch kind of switched over, and now we're in this new world, if you will. So why was now the right time for you to jump into the race and run for California State Assembly?
That is the $1 million question. I think you're right. I think we didn't know what 2020s were going to bring. And in 2020, we saw COVID and George Floyd. And I think both of those are catalyzing events they are generational changers. Like, they shifted things in this country and really around the world. The impact of COVID felt very personal because I live in a tiny little unincorporated town called Ashland with 20,000 people. And in this assembly district, the people in Ashland had the most impact, death and infection from COVID out of any other group in this district. And it's like, for people of color, of which I'm one, to know that we were dying and getting sicker more than everybody else was just like eye-opening. And as a registered nurse, I was like, I'm a public health nurse, so I understand health policy has impacts. And I understand that people often have that disparate impacts is a result of health policy that has been laid out over many, many years. And in order for us to have different health policy, we have to have different people making health policy. And I was like, okay, this is speaking to me. And then there was just this outrage and this like sadness about what happened to George Floyd, that a man could be treated so cruelly, and the amount of universal outrage that we saw amongst people. But also, like, there were folks who were angry at people's outrage, who didn't even understand that people who were protesting the violence and injustice that was that happened to him, that protesting that was okay and understandable. And those two pieces, plus we had this person in the White House that needed to go. And I think all of that was like, it was just creating this energy in our world and inside of me. And I decided then that I was going to try to do something. And in July of what year? We're in 22 right now. In July of 2021, I declared after a lot of soul searching, a lot of talking with my family, a lot of trying to figure out what my life would be and how I was going to live. Because running for state level office in California, no, not a dime, nothing you fundraise can go into paying for your life. So I had to figure out, do I have enough savings? Like all kinds of considerations. And in July of 2021, I declared to run for this office, and I was challenging an incumbent, a person who had already been in office for 10 years. And that is sometimes looked down upon. He was also a Democrat. I'm a Democrat. So doing a Democratic primary challenge, which means, we have a primary election before the general, is controversial. And I thought that there's no bigger controversy than people in my community dying and getting sick, than the racial injustice we saw that leads to that, and the racial injustice we saw that led to George Floyd, and how it all overlaps. And boom, I was just like, this is it. I need to step up.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Oh, that's real.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and I'm also just like a regular person. Like I'm a nurse. I go to work every day. I got kids. And how often do we see just regular people running for office and winning? And I was like, and in Northern California, I'll just give you one little piece of history.
Please.
In Northern California, Barbara Lee, who is now our congresswoman, Barbara Lee speaks for me, who voted no against the war when nobody else would. Barbara Lee was our very first Black woman elected in Northern California to state office.
Wow.
And since then, it took 23 years for another Black woman to get elected to state office in Northern California. And that just happened in a special election last year. So,
Generation.
About trying to make history. Yeah, trying to make history, trying to do the audacious, trying to be bold, and trying to just like wake up our community.
Gotcha. Wow, Jennifer, thank you for that kind of inspiring kind of reasoning, and I'm sure that resonates with folks, whether they live in California, small town, older industrial city like me. I'm in Cleveland, but we've seen a lot of change, I think, emerge around the country in the past 3 years. People kind of coming into their own power in the same way that you just outlined in your own personal story, which is truly inspiring, and hopefully inspires other folks to do the same. Because we need more folks just like you doing the important work and taking the chances like you have. And it's no small task for any means. But as we come off of Black History Month and thinking about Black History Futures and kind of make our way into Women's History Month, I think we've talked about this previously with that this campaign really holds a few number of opportunities for firsts. So if you're elected, you'll be the first openly gay Black person, the first Black Jewish person, in addition to being one of the only nurses in the legislature. So that is pretty big. So can you talk just about the significance of that in the grand scheme of things with representation, and what does it mean to you personally?
Oh, yeah, those are a lot of firsts. And, it's 2022. We still have a lot of room for people to rise up. And yeah, no nurses in office. And this is the third year of COVID. Being the first openly gay Black person feels really impactful because I know what my personal coming out journey was. And I know that singing the first openly gay, I don't know people's personal business, but I do know that the amount of stigma that we in the LGBTQ community go through to find our way, to come out, to just live can be difficult. And in different parts of the country, there are people who are being forced into conversion camps. There are people who are not being allowed to use the bathroom. There are people who are denied basic rights. Reproductive health access is being denied. And the Supreme Court of this country is going to make decisions that are going to impact all of us, really all of us, not just men, not just women, not just male identified or female identified people, but all of us. And it is very important for people like me to be open and loud and proud about who we are and serve as representatives. And I think the same thing goes for me being a Black Jew. In California, there have been studies done by the Pew Foundation, by the Jews of Color Initiative, that outline what our true statistics are. And for people in my age group, I am 41. Jews of color make up about 30% of our population in California. And gay Jews, LGBTQ identified Jews, make up about 25%. And the younger you get, like my kids are teenagers, when you get to their age, Jews of color are 50% of our population. But in the legislature, here we are, I'll be first. So in order to really make sure that not only we have the representation with my skin, with my identity, with my religion, but also with my values. And I think that the values that I hold, which, I knew that when I was first pregnant, I got married by the rabbi. First pregnant, I was like, raising my kids the same way I was raised as Jews, because I want them to know their values. I want them to know the ethics. And there's this phrase, tikkun olam. It's a Hebrew phrase that means to make the world a better place. And that is the value that I feel my representation carries. I'm trying to make the world a better place. And to me, that's the bottom line. Like this little phrase behind me, caring for my community. This is why I'm running, because I care. I'm a nurse, I'm a healer. And I think the nurse piece is the real overarching factor of my identity. But all these other things really do matter. I'm excited to be the first. And I'm excited for people to come with me. As I move forward, I will absolutely be reaching back.
Yeah, the first, but definitely not the last. But yeah, it's interesting to think about how all these identities intersect into, intertwine in our relationships with the other folks within our community. Sometimes we don't know until folks tell us their story. So I'm happy that you can tell your story of all the various ways that you could be the first due to all of the different kind of diversity of communities that you are fortunate enough to be a part of. So that is definitely amazing. And I think inspiring for folks to kind of think about that, maybe not even from a standpoint of activism, but just, thinking about the relationships and friendships that they hold in community, that we can learn from each other, and that you never know folks' stories, their backgrounds until you start having those conversations. So I didn't know all that info about you even when we first had our first conversation, but I'm glad to learn more about your story. It's definitely interesting to say the least, as far as your background and what you bring to the table as someone that's going to potentially be serving in a state assembly. So that's really, 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 for lack of better terms, cool. But I'm interested to know, let's go back to the campaign piece. And I know this, we talked a little bit about this, and it seemed like it kind of sparked some joy in you, but I'd love to learn more about your process for volunteer recruitment. What was your favorite experience working with volunteers, supporting your campaign? Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, volunteer recruitment is definitely at the heart of the campaign. We absolutely are. I'm running as a corporate-free candidate because I think it's really important to represent my values all the way down to the people who I will bring in as supporters. And it also means that people who accept corporate donations are going to be able to probably raise more money than I. So volunteers are absolutely the lifeblood of this campaign. It's going to be voter contact, and they say that the field campaign is what is really going to win it. Somebody told me today to make sure that I keep all the tennis shoes that I wear out as I'm walking and knocking on doors, and just when I win, put them in my office so that it can be like a real monument, a testament to how much work it's going to take to reach voters. So working with volunteers has been incredibly beautiful, and talk about inspiring. I attended nursing school in 2008, and the very first phone bank we had in November, I joined, and one of my nursing school instructors was on the phone bank, Pamela Minerick, and I was like, Dr. Minerick, oh my God, I can't believe you're on it. I mean, just super sweet. And another one of my instructors' daughters has been attending canvases. And it's like, for people to have been in my life 14 years ago. It's a long time. And for them to know me then and to know me now and to be, yeah, I think it's like it speaks to the consistency of my character. It
Mhm.
speaks to the way that people have seen me and the way that they are willing to show up. And for new people who I've never met before, but who understand the campaign, um, folks coming out to canvas week after week, showing up to phone banks, bringing their friends, hosting fundraisers. Like, it is just amazing. And I think some of the best, yesterday, somebody, uh, one of the volunteers on the phone bank was talking to a guy who said, I need to eat my dinner. And he was like, it's okay. You can eat your dinner as long as you remember to say you're going to vote for Jennifer Esteen. And, it's like good humor, good people showing up to do this work is just amazing.
Right.
And I think shared values do that. And I think also the deep organizing that we talked about in the very beginning is making sure that this kind of building is not isolated to the campaign, but
Mhm.
also continues so that we can support the community even after election day.
Right. Right. No, the volunteer. I mean, I've worked as a volunteer. I've worked with volunteers, so it's always kind of when we're thinking about that time and spending time. Depending, I mean, it doesn't really matter what you're necessarily working on. What type of advocacy could be electoral. It is a really good way to create community, meet people, support causes that you care deeply about. So, thank you for providing that example. And you did kind of circle back to kind of the two things I'm thinking about here is just you're identifying as a nurse and someone that provides and cares for community, and then also being an everyday person that
Mhm.
still works, still gets up and takes care of their family and is led by the North Star of their values. So I know that really resonates with me as far as just getting to know you as a person. Through just commonality of interest. So really special to hear the story and to see where you're headed. I'd love to know as we kind of wrap up here what does the future of the campaign look like? What is on the docket as far as plans, and how can folks get involved and support what you're doing?
Yeah, these are perfect questions. So they can definitely check out my website at jenniferesteen.com. Check out social medias, Jennifer, the number 4CA, across all platforms. And I think the horizon of the campaign is deep dive into voter outreach. Uh, we've been knocking on doors all month, February, and now's the time. Like, it's crunch time. Ballots are going to drop on May 8th. We are less than 100 days from election day, but to back that up by 30, we're less than 70 days. I think 67, 66 days until ballots hit people's mailboxes. And so if anybody wants to get involved, you can go on Mobilize and sign up to phone bank with us from anywhere in the country. And if you bring the most volunteers with you on that day, then we name the day for you. So, like, I have a friend um, who said she will come to a phone bank. I'm like, all right, it's going to be Daniva's day when you bring the most volunteers. And this is, it's like we have to make it fun. We have to make it lively, and also it's real. Like, bringing people into the campaign is a way to help spread your values from whatever part of the country you're in to California. Because, you know, California is an interesting place. It's the fifth largest economy in the world, this state is. And it's home to, at least pre-COVID, 179 billionaires. So we are talking about a seat of great wealth right here in America. And because of that, California can lead the way. We also have something special. We have a Democratic supermajority in our state legislature, and we have the governor's mansion. That means any legislation we want to pass, we should be able to pass. Any Democratic legislation that benefits the people. And a couple of weeks ago, we were trying to move universal health care, a policy that was labeled as AB 1400, which some of you may have heard about. And the thing about it is we didn't get to vote. The legislature did not vote on the measure. And I think that it is an indication of how complicated politics can be, and how when there's not enough political will, even having a plurality doesn't guarantee that you're going to get the legislation we deserve. And in this country, as we're thinking about the Supreme Court taking away people's reproductive rights, abortion rights, as we're thinking about voting rights access, we have to make sure that we are electing people and supporting people to get elected who are going to champion these causes, who will do the thing that may not be politically expedient. And like it's hard. It's hard to do, because this is another reason I'm running corporate free, because your corporate donors may be like, I'm gonna pull the purse out from you don't get my money anymore. It's like, well, I didn't need your money in the first place. I'm gonna do the right thing. And I think that level of dedication, that level of bravery is what we have to have. And that is what I'm hoping to bring. That is exactly why I stood up to say my patients do not get evicted. And, that was hard to do. I went to work one day. We were planning a protest. We went to the health commission and shut the meeting down at 5:00. At 8 a.m. the next morning, I came back to work and my computer was missing from my desk. I was like,
what?
They took my computer. They're intimidated. That's intimidation. And I was like, I don't understand why they're doing this, but I was willing to put it all on the line for my clients. And I am willing to put it all on the line for my constituents, for the people who live in this district, for the people who live in this state, and for the example that California can be with legislation that protects our climate, with legislation that gives us access to health care, with legislation that helps to get people out of prison and jail, with legislation that helps to make sure our schools are fully funded. Like, I want to make sure that this is what we are focused on. And even if it's not popular in the Capitol, even if it's not politically expedient, because it is the right thing to do, like, we would never have gotten out of bondage if people waited for it to be popular.
No, that is a historical fact. So you have to push.
You have to push. So this is why, please, folks who are watching, join the campaign. Check out my socials. Check out my website. Join the campaign, because this is a way that we can really build power and build for our country, build for our state, build for our community.
We need it. And I think every level shows being active at the level you can and working outward and creating that ripple effect. So this is so inspiring. And thank you for your time. I do have one final question. I always like to throw in a little extra here. Just talking with folks, as a bit of advice, so this takes a lot of effort. There's no shortcuts to organizing. It's really going deep, being personal, being personable, which you are both of. But what do you do to keep yourself balanced, if there is any kind of semblance of balance in the throes of an electoral race, if you will? What advice, or what do you do, or what have you created? What constructs have you created for you to be able to have some sort of balance and kind of have your respite? What is your recipe in that sense?
This is an eternal question for me. I think it's not easy, because this campaign life is incredibly, it's time consuming, and it is something that is emotionally difficult. I often feel like I am, even though I know this is about my values, I feel like it's about selling myself, and that's a hard thing to think about. But what I try to do is see my kids every day. Even though they live in the house, I'm often in a room with the door closed. So I try to see them every day, take them to school, or at least, have a conversation with them late, even if we can't have dinner together. I carve out Friday night as a date night, which is a few hours, but it is a precious time that I try to hold sacred. And I have 2 mornings a week where I see my trainer. 45 minutes. And there are many days where I am like, this is torture. It's killing me. But I also know that while I am moving my body, building strength, that it is strength of body
Hmm.
and it is strength of mind, because I cannot quit. Um, I just cannot quit. You know, Harriet Tubman said, when you hear the dogs, don't
Yeah.
look back,
Don't look
keep
back.
running, right? When you
Yeah.
hear the voices, don't look back,
Yeah.
keep running. And if you hear a gunshot, don't look back,
Keep
keep
running.
running. And, you know, it's like I feel like this process of
Hmm.
building community, of building organizing strength and power, of building a campaign that can win on grassroots efforts alone, I think that this is what it's going to take, a
Hmm.
certain level of perseverance that brings my nursing school instructor from 14 years ago to join on a phone bank. You know, this is what it is.
It is. It is.
Yeah.
So thank you for that. And with that, we'll bring this fireside chat to a close. I could go on and on, going back and forth, but we're gonna have to save that for another time, another day, which I'm sure we'll be able to do at some point in the future. So I just want to say thank you on behalf of the team here at Action Network. It was a pleasure having the opportunity to have this chat with you. Thank you to the folks that were able to join us today, and thank you to the folks that are watching the recording. Really appreciate it. So take care and best of luck in all of your endeavors, Jennifer. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Seth.
All right. Goodbye.